Namaste everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So basically, we are here to discuss a little bit on Bhagavad Gita. Both me and Nilesh have been Bhagavad Gita students for last 20 plus years or even maybe more. And we conduct discussion groups. In fact, I conduct a Bhagavad Gita discussion group every week, wherein we discuss on the Bhagavad Gita. And there's a very common question that is asked to both of us individually in our discussions or together in group as to, how do we study Bhagavad Gita? Where do we start with? What translation to use? That's a very, very common question asked to each one of both of us, either individually or together. And of course, we answer it in the groups that we are in or, individually. But I wanted the audience to hear Nilesh's perspective on, how to study the Gita. So Nilesh, over to you.
All right. So Ashwini, before quickly going over the three key points of how to study Bhagavad Gita, I also want to summarize for the benefit of those who would be listening to this. And many of them may be even new to Bhagavad Gita in the sense they have never studied it. So I just want to give a typical reaction or typical viewpoint that on an average individual may have coming to this particular question that you just mentioned, frequently asked question, how to study Bhagavad Gita. For example, many may know this, that it is a Hindu scripture. I mean, that's how they will define it. It's a Hindu scripture. Scripture is not a dharmic word, but I'm saying that's how they will mention it or they will position it. Many will know that it is Krishna's advice to Arjun, and some of them may also know that it's part of Mahabharata. Now, when it comes to their belief about Bhagavad Gita, possibly, many think of this, and I have come across many, and I'm sure that's your experience too. If not, you can tell me otherwise. But possibly something to study in old age when nothing else that is worthwhile can be performed. And that's why I come across many people, they say, well, Ari, why are you studying it now? I mean, they will tell me even now, but they were telling me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They said, this is something to be done afterwards. Some of them believe that this is Bhagavad Gita is something spiritual, but it may just stop at that. Some others will also believe that this is something mumbo jumbo, something for a religious mind or for a weak mind, in the sense of a negative sense, the negative belief. But it's real. It's out there. Many think that it is boring, and many actually may give it a shot and may come to the conclusion or feel that it is boring, and many may think it's a waste of time. On their feeling towards Bhagavad Gita or study of Bhagavad Gita, there are folks who find it repulsive and regressive and in backward in some fashion. Many may even find it offensive in the sense that somebody asking them to study Bhagavad Gita, they may find it offensive. They may think of somebody in an offensive fashion if somebody is spending time studying Bhagavad Gita. They may feel guilty studying Bhagavad Gita. What if others come to know? And some will also feel guilty that they are not studying Bhagavad Gita. Many may feel incapable of studying Bhagavad Gita, and they may state this by saying they don't know Sanskrit or things of that nature, or they did not have that background from their family. They have to study on their own. So that could be their feeling. As I said, repulsive, regressive, these are some of the feelings. Also feeling backward. Now, this is interesting. Sometimes they may feel backward that they're studying Bhagavad Gita, and especially wondering what others may feel about them if they come to know that this individual is studying Bhagavad Gita. But there is another side to this. They may feel that some individual is backward if they come to know that that individual is studying Bhagavad Gita. And then lastly, I would say many also feel very indifferent, very neutral to it. In the sense, Ashwini, okay, if you want to study Bhagavad Gita, hey, be my guest, study Bhagavad Gita, but don't tell me. I'm indifferent. I won't hold anything against you, but I'm not going to encourage anyone. In that sense, they feel neutral and indifferent. Now,
Also,
yeah.
Nilesh, to add to this, many people still feel it's a mythology. That is
Mhm.
the biggest thing. You remember, we both are faced with whenever we go out and meet social groups. That is it a real or is it a mythology or was it really told? Even they start with that. So even that is one of the common problems that people have.
Belief, yeah, it is their belief. And frankly, to your point, when they ask, like when you and me experience, like they say, well, isn't it mythology? Frankly, they're not asking a question. They are, in a way, of course, without
Right.
any basis, frankly, but they are convinced that it is a mythology.
Mhm.
And therefore, some people who may study or they might defend even so-called dharmic occurring, I mean, so-called like folks who take a dharmic stance, they would say, if when we talk about the historicity of Bhagavad Gita or historicity of Mahabharata, in which the Bhagavad Gita is part, they will say, it doesn't matter. These are the values that we are looking for. And partly this is the narrative that they have heard. They are blindly repeating it. But other times, because they are so convinced, without any evidence, of course, in their belief that it is a mythology, and therefore also that they take this stance that, let's not go into history and make a joke of ourselves. Somebody is going to call us out. Let's just think the values and the wonderful advice it gives. So this is their rationalization. And quickly, last one, what do they do as a result of all these uh, partial knowledge that they have, or their beliefs or these feelings? Some of them in their personal life, not discussing anything, but they may recite it, which is of course good, but we're not talking about good or bad. We're just talking this is a Purva Paksha, what the situation is. So they may recite it. Then interestingly, you'll see that they themselves may not be aware of it, but when they have children, they feel like the children should get some good sanskar, and they may enroll children in some Bhagavad Gita class or send it to a Sunday school, Hindu school, something like
Yeah,
this.
like how in Marathi we say "झोपी गेलेला जागा झाला."
Right. And so may ask their children to study, beta jara Bhagavad Gita pad, right? Something of that effect. And some others, as an action, they may try to read it, and some of them will continue in a very Shraddha spirit, on the force of Shraddha. Some of them will actually think, as that goes back to the belief that if they chant it, their papa would go away, as if like that's like a pill, that cures the headache or something. Not realizing that when they study, they can implement the lessons from it, and that gets rid of the papa, not just the reading of it, but of course, reading is the first step. It's like a Shravanam is the first step. And some of them, therefore, they may try to read it, of course, and some may give up after feeling bored in no time. And that's one reason what Ashwini, you also do in a study Bhagavad Gita in a group. I have been part of group studies in the past. Right now, I don't have any one of those. But do you want to add anything else? Then I want to quickly jump and get
No, no.
into how to study Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, please.
My two
Yes,
cents.
yes, please.
Okay. So
Continue.
very good. So I want to describe how to study Bhagavad Gita by three big steps, or three keys, I would say. One is, it is very useful to have a knowledge of the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita, no matter
Mhm,
which portion of Bhagavad Gita you are studying. So you may
mhm.
start in a specific chapter, of course, with the beginning chapter, but no matter where you are in your study of Bhagavad Gita, any one of the 18 chapters, you always have this sense of the broad skeleton for the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So that's one thing to know, even before we start studying Bhagavad Gita. Naturally, the part of studying Bhagavad Gita. The second one is the actual method, and I'll talk about it briefly. And the third one is once you study it or as you start studying, what is the method of experimenting, what is the method of experiencing, and also what is the method of practicing the things that one is going to learn in Bhagavad Gita. So let's begin with the first, having the knowledge of the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. It is part of Mahabharata text. It occurs in Bhishma Parva. But number of these things we don't have to worry, because Bhagavad Gita is available as a standalone book, okay, in many formats, online formats, in a textbook, in a paper format, so in an audio format. So definitely you need to get something in a paper format, but we'll get that into the second part when we get into the method of study. But here, just to understand the broad skeleton of Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 chapters. Adhyaya, it is called, and each Adhyaya has multiple shloka. There are total of 700 or 701 shloka in Bhagavad Gita. Why this difference? This is something, if you are just starting, nothing to worry about. It depends on how you split a shlok and so on. 700 shlok is sufficient for our knowledge. The first Adhyaya is where the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is given, because Arjun is ready to fight the war. This is the first day of the war. The war has not yet begun. And suddenly Arjun goes through a shock. He doesn't feel like fighting. And it is known as a Vishada Yoga, Moha Grasta. Moha, the word Muda, like a stupid, foolish, also comes from the word Moha. It's like a hypnotized. Somebody is hypnotized, Moha Grasta. And in order to take away that moha of Arjun, Bhagwan Krishna is narrating this advice, Gita, Bhagavad Gita, to Arjun. So the second chapter, actually the full answer is given to Arjuna's questions or Arjuna's confusion. What is discussed in second chapter? There is a Sankhya Yoga that is being discussed in second chapter, Buddhi Yoga that is being discussed in second chapter, and it ends with the Lakshana of a Sthita Prajna, the Nimitta or Lakshana or the signs of a Sthita Prajna, and the essence of that knowledge is Brahma Nirvana. That's where the second chapter ends. And frankly, that's where the Bhagavad Gita could have ended in principle and Arjuna could have started the fight. But based on what was discussed in second chapter, Arjun ended up asking a question to Krishna. And I'm not going to go into the details of this, but that question is what led to the expansion of Bhagavad Gita, or as if led to the expansion of Bhagavad Gita. So to respond to that, now Krishna extended his discussion, and that is covered in Adhyaya 3, 4, and 5. In which there is a discussion of a karma, there is a discussion of a vikarma, and there is a discussion of a akarma. That last 5th chapter, it discusses karma yoga versus karma sannyas, but karma yoga and karma sannyas. And again, it ends with a Brahma Nirvana. Okay, which is to say, what Krishna has covered in the second chapter, he has expanded somewhat because Arjun asked the question, and he covered that subject in the next 3 Adhyaya, 3, 4, 5, karma, vikarma, akarma, all 3 of them related to karma yoga. So again, at the end of the 5th chapter, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is being told. Now what remains from 6th chapter onwards all the way to the 17 chapters, we can think of these as additional tools, okay, to accomplish what is already discussed in second chapter, but also chapter 3, 4, and 5. So what do we have? In chapter 6, 7, and 8, we have the aspects of Dhyana Yoga discussed in these 3 chapters. Next 4 chapters, chapter 9, 10, 11, 12, or Adhyaya 9, 10, 11, 12, Bhakti Yoga is discussed. Next 3 chapters, chapter 13, 14, 15, or Adhyaya 13, 14, 15, Jnana Yoga is discussed. In some sense, again, in terms of the toolkit, the tool set, again, this is complete. So chapter 16 and 17 are basically Appendix A and Appendix B. And finally, again, chapter 18, which is a summary chapter, it begins with where chapter 5 ended, the Karma Yoga and a Karma Sannyas. So the discussion begins with the discussion of what is Tyaga and what is a Sannyasa, which is a continuation of 5th chapter. Then rest is the summary of everything that is being discussed in Bhagavad Gita. And in short, that is the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, it is something very important to keep in mind as you study it. Let's quickly go to the second part, the method of study. Immediately people ask which language I should study in and which translation I should use, and I don't know Sanskrit, or my Sanskrit is not that good. The simple thing is, choose the language that you are most comfortable with, and that language in which also a translation is available. Naturally, the next question is which translation is correct, or is there one translation that gives the true meaning of Bhagavad Gita or a perfect meaning of Bhagavad Gita? The answer is there is no one translation that will give you the true meaning or a perfect meaning of Bhagavad Gita. But this is not something that creates a problem. In fact, begin with any translation you have. The key is not to stop with any one translation, but you begin with whichever translation is available to you. And then as you study, and remember, this is not something you just study Bhagavad Gita one time and it's done. It's never done, as a matter of fact. But aim to look at least 5, 6 truly diverse translations when you go through the next round of Bhagavad Gita and so on. Okay. How do you do it actually now? Once you have a book and you have a translation, always recite the original in Sanskrit. Okay, initially you may have some hesitation, but still try. If not every single shloka, if not every single verse, at least recite some. There is a method to madness. There is a value to do that. Then read a translation in the first round, for each shloka, read the translation. If you have a discussion group, discuss anything that you want to add, ask others if they want to add anything. Read multiple translations in the future rounds. Always try to connect the translation to the skeleton key or the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita that we discussed in the first part. So at any time you are there and you are trying to understand why is Krishna saying something like this, or why Arjuna is asking, always go back and say, what is being discussed in chapter 6? Oh, that's a Dhyana Yoga. What is being discussed in chapter 15? Oh, that's a part of Jnana Yoga, and so on. Okay. So always try to connect and you'll get much more out of it. Now let's go to the last part of this method of study. Note the verse, note the translation, note down the verses and the translation that do not make sense to you, do not make sense to your group. Okay, because when you do this second round, you may look at another translation and more than likely it will resolve that issue for you. Okay, let's go to quickly the last part. So first one was knowing the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita. Second is the method of study, which book to use, which translation to use, and how to actually study it. The third one is the method of experimenting, method of experiencing and practicing. As you study, select a piece of advice from Bhagavad Gita and try to implement it. And then note down, it may be on the paper or in your mind, and discuss that among your group members. Note down the changes, benefits, challenges, even negatives of the outcome of you making that change. You said, well, I tried this, but it didn't quite work. Actually, it created this problem. Discuss that. Okay. So quickly in summary, we looked at 3 specific steps for studying Bhagavad Gita, understanding the skeleton of Bhagavad Gita. We discussed how to study it, which book, which translation, and how to implement what you learn. So quick summary before Ashwini, I give it back to you. Find a copy, find a translation. If you don't have it, procure it, study individually or study in groups. Implement what you learn, try to implement what you learn, experiment with it, be bold, have some fun, and don't stop, because this is a journey that never ends. So once you go through the whole round, that doesn't mean you're expert in Bhagavad Gita. You start studying again, maybe with another translation, have the old translation as a reference, and see every time you're going to get new insights. Don't stop. This is a journey that never ends. It is a sadhan, but also it is a sadhya. It is also a toolkit for your journey, but it is also a destination. With that, back to you, Ashwini.
Yeah, thank you, Nilesh. Very well summarized for all of us and the audience. I just want to add a couple of things from my experience of conducting discussion groups on the Gita. There is no right or wrong age to start. One can start at the age of 3 also. So do not please think that, it's only for the old or it's only for the middle-aged or nothing like that. The earlier you start, the better. Not knowing Sanskrit cannot be a showstopper. It doesn't matter if you don't know Sanskrit. There are translations available in all languages. Start with whatever you're comfortable with, as Nilesh said. And it is a study, it's a lifetime study. Possibly not one lifetime is enough to really understand the Bhagavad Gita, let alone implement it. And yeah, that's what I think I need. I will end it with, these 3 points, which I keep telling my students, or, the members of the discussion. So thank you, everyone. And namaskar to everyone. Jagadamba.
Namaskar.